It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when I saw him, Mark, my neighbor's husband, standing motionless at the end of the driveway. His uniform clung to him, soaked through from the downpour, his boots caked with mud. I hadn't seen him in over a year. The last time we spoke was the day he left for deployment, when Sarah stood on the porch waving him off with that brave smile she always wore. Now, he was back, but alone. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped out onto my porch. I wanted to run to him, to ask where she was, to believe she'd come out from behind him with her usual warm laugh. But he just looked at me with eyes so hollow they barely looked human. "She didn't make it," he said quietly, the words barely audible over the rain. Time seemed to stop. I stood there, frozen, as his shoulders dropped, as if the sentence had taken what little strength he had left. Sarah had cancer. I knew that. But she said she was doing okay. We had tea together just before Mark came home. She didn't even mention how bad it had gotten. The guilt hit me first. Then the grief. But above all, I felt this unbearable ache, not just for her loss, but for the man in front of me, who had returned from a war zone only to find the home he was fighting for had changed forever. A week had passed since Mark returned, and the neighborhood still felt unusually quiet. People whispered, left casseroles at his doorstep, but no one really knew what to say. I tried to give him space, not wanting to intrude on his grief. But then, one evening just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, there was a soft knock on my door. Mark stood there, his eyes red-rimmed but dry this time. In his hand was a worn envelope, creased at the corners, my name written in Sarah's delicate handwriting. He held it out with a small nod. "She asked me to give you this." I took the letter with trembling fingers, unsure if I was ready for whatever was inside. Once he left, I sat down in the kitchen and opened it. Her scent still clung faintly to the paper, lavender and something warm I couldn't name. The words inside were pure Sarah. Honest, loving, full of grace even in the face of death. She didn't dwell on her illness or regrets. Instead, she thanked me, for being her friend, her confidant, for the laughter and quiet support. But near the end of the letter was a request that made my chest tighten. "Please look after Mark. He won't know how to ask, but he'll need someone. Don't let him close himself off." Tears streamed down my face. Even in her final moments, she was thinking of others. She knew him so well. And she trusted me with what she loved most. Mark started coming by more often after the letter. At first, it was little things, fixing the creaky gate, helping carry groceries, mending a loose step on my porch. He never stayed long, never said much, but I could see the weight he carried. His movements were robotic, his eyes always distant, like he was somewhere far away even when standing right in front of me. One evening, I noticed he hadn't come around for a few days. Just as I was starting to worry, I saw him sitting on the curb outside my house, staring at nothing. I walked over slowly and sat beside him without saying a word. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. We sat in silence for a while before he finally spoke. "I thought I'd have more time with her," he whispered, voice rough. I kept thinking, just one more tour, one more paycheck, then we'd start living. He paused, then looked down at his hands. "I gave everything to serve my country. I did my job. But I came back and, she was gone. No parade, no reunion. Just silence." The pain in his voice was raw, unfiltered. I had never seen someone so strong look so broken. And yet, he wasn't asking for anything, just sitting with the ache that words couldn't fix. I reached over and placed my hand on his. He didn't pull away. That small gesture said more than either of us could. He didn't want to be alone. Not really. The next morning, I made a quiet decision. I remembered how much Sarah used to love volunteering at the local shelter, the one with the peeling paint and the smiling faces that greeted everyone like family. I called Mark and asked if he wanted to join me. He hesitated, then said, maybe. I don't know what good I'd be. But he showed up. At first, he kept his head down, quietly ladling soup into bowls and organizing donated clothes. He didn't talk much, but the people there didn't expect him to. They just smiled, said thank you, and carried on. Slowly, something started shifting in him. One day, a little boy hugged his leg after receiving a warm jacket. Mark froze. Then he knelt down, ruffled the boy's hair, and smiled, really smiled, for the first time since he'd come back. We kept going back, week after week. He began remembering people's names, listening to their stories. Many were veterans too, or people who'd lost more than he had, homes, families, dignity. He started fixing broken chairs, repainting walls, even organizing food drives. It was subtle at first, but I could see it, each act of service, each shared laugh, chipped away at the wall around his heart. One evening, he told me, helping them, it's the first time I've felt human since I came home. It was in those quiet, generous acts that healing took root. He wasn't just giving them hope. Without realizing it, he was finding his own. Months passed, and something remarkable began to grow from all the pain. Mark wasn't just volunteering anymore, he had found purpose. He poured himself into building something lasting, something Sarah would have been proud of. With the help of a few friends and a modest fundraiser, he launched a small non-profit in her name, the Sarah Grace Project, to support veterans and their families transitioning back to civilian life. The grand opening was held on a breezy spring afternoon. The community gathered outside a modest building painted in soft blues and whites, just like Sarah would have liked. There were photos of her hanging on the walls, laughing, smiling, alive in every frame. I stood beside Mark as he stepped up to speak. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. He held up the same letter Sarah had written to me and read from it, the best way to honor love, is to share it. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. As people clapped, some wiping away tears, Mark looked over at me and smiled, a quiet, grateful smile that held more meaning than words could ever express. He had come back from war broken, lost, and grieving. But through kindness, connection, and Sarah's enduring spirit, he had found a way forward. I realized then, he didn't come back alone. He came back carrying her love, and now he was giving it to the world. And in doing so, he reminded all of us, healing is possible when we choose to keep loving.